Hey everybody, welcome back to Colony Drop, your favorite Gundam podcast. My name is Isaac.
And my name is Brian, and this is a podcast where we talk about anything and everything related to the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise, from the anime, to the movies, to the music, to the manga, to the lore, to the models, to the food, to the clothes. You name it, we do it all, Isaac.
Yes, that's right, Brian. And we have a very special episode today because it is an actual watch episode. And by watch, I mean not the time. I mean that we watched an anime series. Isn't that right, Brian?
That is right. If you've listened to the show at all on a regular basis, you'll know that this is probably our arch enemy, Isaac.
One of them.
One of them, yes.
Yeah.
The show we may like the least in the Gundam canon, and that is Gundam 00.
Yeah, well, oh boy, that's his own episode. Which do we like the least? We have to say that after like I'll rewatch everything. But wow, yeah, Gundam 00. I just have so many thoughts and mixed feelings and opinions, and when you average them out, it's not a good result.
Do you remember watching 00, Isaac, the first time? Like, what was your headspace back then compared to today?
I think my headspace was somewhat similar to now, in that I watched it and I was like, okay, just as, Seed was the 1 Year War, 00 is their attempt at doing Wing again, just modernized. And then I kind of watched it through that lens, kind of found it a bit more interesting, but I remember absolutely liking it less in the past when I saw it for the first time than recently, like last week when I wrapped it up. I'm not saying I liked it, but I was able to find myself maybe not enjoying it, but tolerating it better than I did the first time.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, especially since you and I know what's coming in the movie.
Yeah.
The nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, I watched 00 as it aired. I watched the fan subs back in the day. And I really enjoyed season 1 back then. And then season 2, I did not like very much at all. That kind of killed my enthusiasm for the show. And then I watched the movie, and then I just kind of never engaged with the show again.
You want to forget it.
Yeah. And that goes back to how I think you and I consume media, where like the ending is very important. I think we've said that multiple times across multiple reviews. So if something has a very bad ending, it really kind of kills it for us. Maybe that's why we just don't like this show so much, Isaac, because we don't like the ending. I think there are a lot of people that like the ending, but we're just not one of those people.
It's not just that, too. It's that you and I weren't big Wing fans.
Yeah.
So by having something that's essentially done in the spirit of a rebooted Wing, we're already almost not on board.
Yeah, that's fair.
But in defense of this and Wing, this at least starts out more interesting than Wing. Well, maybe not more interesting, but definitely more interesting than a lot of Gundam series because, as you and I have mentioned, Brian, there are way too many characters and way too many factions.
Yeah, when you said mixed feelings, I think that's a good way to describe the first season of 00. So I guess I should say that first. What we're going to review tonight is the first season. In the first season only. We'll do a separate episode on season 2.
I don't even think we said 00. Yes, this is about 00, listener.
I said 00, right?
Okay, Gundam 00, the first season, which is 25 episodes. I think this is new. This is the first time they ever did this sort of season breakup approach.
It was the first time that a 50-episode series was broken into 2. So let's do some of those basics real quick. So you're right, this is a series. There are 2 seasons, 50 total episodes. Again, tonight we're only doing season 1, 25 episodes. In Japan, it aired from October 2007 to March 2008. And in the US, Isaac, it aired from November 2008 to February 2009. And the most interesting part about that is it aired on the Sci-Fi Channel. It did not air on Cartoon Network.
Which, for you listeners, back in the day... You had to watch a channel to watch really anything.
Yeah.
So...
and Cartoon Network was that channel, right? There was Gundam really only had one home.
Yeah, and like you couldn't even watch it at all times of the day because most of the time it was kind of like American style cartoons for like maybe pre-teens, low teens, and children. And you had to wait for something called like Adult Swim, which is when they put on like this is the older teen anime, and like there'd be like Gundam and Cowboy Bebop and stuff involving guns but no blood. So yeah, that's how you. You consumed 00, wow.
I think at the time, it must have aired on the Sci-Fi Channel, because I think there was a period of time where, like, Toonami didn't exist for a while, like, Adult Swim didn't exist for a while, so they probably didn't have anywhere to put it, so I'm sure Bandai was like, well, I guess we'll put it on the Sci-Fi Channel. And at the time, Isaac, that was right after when, like, Sci-Fi rebranded to, like, SYFY instead of the old good branding, which was, like, the normal way of spelling sci-fi. Do you remember that?
Yeah. This was, I guess, during, we'll date ourselves, but this was back when Battlestar Galactica, I think, was all the rage.
Right, around that time.
That was the Game of Thrones back in the day.
Yeah.
It was that big. Man, God, Sci-Fi Channel. We could do a whole podcast on the Sci-Fi Channel, listeners. It was a relic of its time, and boy, what an interesting time it was.
But now we're in the modern world, Isaac, and if you want to watch Gundam 00, you can watch it on Hulu and Crunchyroll.
There's actually other places you can watch it too, right?
I meant on official avenues, okay?
If you think about it, Brian, there might be even more free places to watch it.
Probably. That's probably true. Don't you subscribe to Hulu?
Yeah, but I don't care.
You subscribed to the service, but you didn't watch it on there.
No, I was like, you know what? It's faster if I don't even use Hulu.
Well, you know what? That's good. So Hulu has both the sub and the dub, and Crunchyroll, I believe, only has the sub. But Crunchyroll has the movie, whereas Hulu does not have the movie. Now, Isaac, I got to rant a little bit about the watch experience on Hulu.
Oh, boy.
Because, so when I originally watched the show, again, I watched it when it came out. So I watched the fan subs, I watched the sub, obviously. So this time I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch the dub. But Hulu's watch experience for anime is like incredibly subpar, in my opinion. First of all, you're starting this show, right? It's a 50-episode show. If I'm the streaming algorithm, I should pick up that this person is watching episode after episode of the same show, and I should serve him or her that show as soon as they click on my streaming service, right? The continue watching area. But on Hulu, the continue watching area is like 5 or 6 layers down. You have to click through the other crap they're trying to serve you, including like whatever, special event is this month. Second of all, if you watch the dub, and maybe even the sub, I'm not sure, they don't translate the on-screen super titles, meaning like when they go to like a military base and there's Japanese writing on it that says where they are, they don't translate it. So I went the whole show not knowing where the hell, what like factory or whatever it is I was in all the time.
Which faction building am I looking at?
I have no idea.
There's 7 factions.
It's so difficult.
Whose headquarters is this? Brian, well, clearly that could have been avoided if you watched through, shall we say, an alternate platform.
Right, and you know who translates those? Are the fan subbers. I mean, yeah. Jesus Christ. And so I even turned on the subtitles for the dub, hoping that they would translate the super titles in the subtitles, and they did not.
Huh.
Anyway.
Well, as far as the algorithm, Brian, maybe they were trying to shield you. They were like, no, this series ends horribly. We have to make sure he watches other Hulu content. Watch Handmaid's Tale. Anything but this.
Yes, pretty much.
Anything but 00. It's Gundam Wing, but somewhat worse.
Yeah. Anyway, very frustrating. So, like you said, first one to be broken into 2 blocks. This was also, Isaac, the first one, I believe, that was broadcast in widescreen and in HD. So that's how old yet new it is.
Nice. Yeah, I remember being on vacation in Hawaii and then catching this a little bit at night, and I was like, oh my god. I wasn't obviously watching in order or anything like that, but I watched a little bit of it, and I was like, oh my god, they're forming the Earth Federation. This must be a great prequel series. But no, little did I know this was not a great series in any form.
Yeah.
But Brian, how do we begin tonight's dissection?
Okay, so
of 00.
There's a lot going on in this series. I did try to write a summary, but it's not going to be the most detailed summary, so I think we'll just kind of meander through the summary and bring up our points as we go.
I'm going to look through our texts.
Oh, yeah, we already like half reviewed it over text, so Isaac was just texting me angrily as he was watching it, like, I can't believe the HRL, Anyway, one last thing before we start. The 00 wiki is like really maintained well. 00 just must have some really ardent fans that are really into organization, because if you go look at the 00 sections on the wiki, they're much more organized than most of the other sections. So whoever, kudos to whoever that fan is who is maintaining the wiki in such a nice, organized fashion. And the log line for the show is probably the most comprehensive and well-written, without spoilers, out of all the other shows. So I'm going to read it. It's a little long, but it sets up so many things in the perfect way.
Okay.
In the year 2307 AD, fossil fuels have all but vanished, and the distribution of energy is unbalanced. Humanity now relies on 3 large-scale solar power systems controlled by 3 multinational power blocks: the Union of Solar Energy and Free Nations, the Human Reform League, and the Advanced European Union. With this nearly inexhaustible source of energy benefiting only these three powers and their allies, constant warfare erupted around the globe among minor countries for precious fuels and energy. Countries whose economy relied solely on the sale of fossil fuels were plunged into poverty, and some even believed the solar power system threatened the promised land of God, resulting in the 20-year-long solar wars. Such a chaotic reality has led to the creation of a paramilitary organization in possession of 4 highly advanced humanoid mobile suits called Gundams, and a mysterious technology known as the GN Drive. They call themselves Celestial Being, and their goal is nothing less than the complete eradication of war through the use of war itself.
Wow.
Isaac, that's a lot for a brand new series, right? A lot of factions.
Nothing about colonies.
Very few colonies in this show.
Nothing about a group of colonies breaking away in a fight for independence.
Yeah. Well, you won't be finding that here.
No. The setting isn't even a war currently taking place, which essentially almost every other Gundam series has.
Yeah, there's not really a big war.
No.
I do like the setup. I get a similar feeling to this show like I do Wing, Isaac, where the premise is actually pretty good. And then it's something about just the execution that bothers me.
You know what? Just a quick glance over. It's a little 1984 setup in a way. By that I mean, we have Oceania, kind of Eurasia, kind of East Asia, right?
Yeah.
And they don't really get along. Although in 1984, they're actually outright fighting. I don't know why, if these pilots and Celestial Being are just so oriented around peace, why not have the 3 superstates actually locked in like a stalemate war, a global war? That would have kind of been a better setting, I think. But no, it's a period of relative peace. But that's not good enough for Celestial Being.
Yeah, I wrote somewhere that this series is a bit of a paradox because, as the description said, they rely on these orbital elevators for the solar power. And look, I love orbital elevators, space elevators as a sci-fi concept, but my understanding is, 1, we don't really have the materials to make them in the near future, and 2, they're not very practical. They're like the biggest target for war because they're fixed, right? If you build a space elevator, well, you know where it is and it ain't going anywhere. You can't really move it to protect it. So to me it's a bit of a paradox because we're saying that they want to achieve peace, but in my mind the only way you could ever even accomplish building a space elevator is to be in a peaceful world where no one would actually attack your space elevator.
Yeah, you would absolutely need the dozens of countries that form each of these blocks to team up and put the resources together to build it, and then agree not to kill each other,
Right.
fighting over the actual orbital elevator, which is, I mean, they call it an orbital elevator, which is true, it is. It gets people up into space. But at the same time, it's kind of a glorified solar energy tower because the ultimate purpose of it is to bring power back down to Earth.
You're right, though. They do go up and down in the elevator, but in terms of like how they use it in the story, it's much more based around the power source, which is kind of odd. Yeah. I wonder if they started writing something with elevators and then they moved and they just never got rid of the elevators. Because would the story be that different if we didn't have the elevators?
Not really. If they're going up into space in shuttles,
right,
and instead there was just like a giant space solar grid. No,
yeah,
I don't think it would be that huge of a difference.
At least not in season 1. I mean, maybe it's some certain events in season 2.
But we're told the energy's scarce, but we don't really see that because every city we see looks pretty damn prosperous to me. Nobody's rationing electricity anywhere in the story.
Even Azadistan or whatever is like, seems okay. Not doing that terrible.
Yeah, the only reason they had problems was because like their military planned a coup. It wasn't because like power ran out and like the government collapsed and the military was like, well, I guess it's up to us to kind of like make sure the power gets back on.
Yeah, their terrible attempt at a coup. We'll get into that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think season 1 has kind of like 6 parts. We start with Celestial Being interventions. Then we have the Gundam capture attempt. Then we have the Azadistan Civil War. And then we have the joint military exercise and the blocks starting to cooperate. Then we have what I'm calling the Game of Thrones, Isaac, or the Age of the Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
To cap it off, we have like Operation Fallen Angels / the rise of Mr. Alejandro, who maybe is the most mysterious man in the world. Anyway, so Celestial Being is this paramilitary organization. The whole first 10 episodes of the show are them intervening in various conflicts. and we kind of just bounce around between those. So the first thing they do is they intervene on the AEU, which is the Advanced European Union testing of the Enact, which is their new mobile suit. Sets the main character kind of just cuts the guy down effortlessly. Oh, I guess by the way, I guess even before we go deeper into that, we should talk about the characters real quick, because there are so many, and we're going to mention them by name.
God.
Let me know if I forgot any, Isaac. So start off with our celestial being crew, our Gundam ship for the show, right? The Ptolemy or the Ptolemaios, whichever one you prefer. Turns out you can pronounce it either way. I don't know why they didn't just stick with one, but the characters go back and forth throughout the show. Did you notice that? Did that bother you? It bothered me.
I didn't actually notice that because, to be honest, I didn't even know the ship had a name.
Wow.
It went in one ear and came out the other. Looking at this ship, having seen it in action, I don't like this ship. I don't like it at all. It is just a not good design.
It's not a looker, I'll say that. It's not maybe the most attractive ship that the Gundam universe has ever produced.
Yeah.
Ironically, because the crew of the ship may be some of the most attractive character designs that they've ever made. So we have the captain, Sumeragi Lee Noriega. We have Christina and Felt, who are kind of like the bridge girls. Then you've got the two guys who are also on the bridge, Lishti and Lasse. Then you have the Gundam Meisters, which the term Gundam Meisters has always thrown me off, Isaac. It's never really resonated with me, but I know some people really enjoy it.
I assume because Shinberg was German, he took the German version of Master. So.
Yeah. So the Gundam Masters, if you will.
Yeah.
We have 4 main Gundam pilots. Setsuna F. Seiei. Gotta say his full name, Isaac. How, never just call him Setsuna. Lock-on Stratus, Tierra Arde, and Alleluia Haptism / sometimes Hallelujah Haptism, which may be one of the funniest Gundam names ever made.
Oh, boy.
We have our civilian friends, Isaac, of Saji Crossroad, who's a student, Louise Holloway, her mom, Mrs. Holloway, and Kinoue Crossroad, Saji's sister, who is a journalist. We have the second Celestial Being team, in quotes, the pilots of the Throne Gundams, Johan, Michael, and Nena.
Yeah.
And then we have the characters from the different blocks. So from the Union, the main characters are Graham Aker and his flag team, Professor Ralph Afman, and Katagiri, a.k.a. Billy. I don't know how you could get your first name being Billy and your last name, mate. Is it his last name, Katagiri? Were they just like, Katagiri, that's too complicated, I'm going to call you Billy?
Katagiri is pretty forgiving as far as Japanese names go.
He's also a scientist, / I guess an engineer, I'll say. For the Advanced European Union, we have, or the AEU, we have Colonel Mannequin and Patrick Collisauer. I could have done without pretty much all of the AEU characters, Isaac.
Yeah, it was... okay, because they had to show us that each of the 3 mega factions are like each incredible threat, they each get their ace, and they each get their officer.
That's right. Yeah, the whole show it's going to have the Celestial Being people that are going to be our protagonists, and then all the blocks are going to build up these characters that sort of eventually oppose them, sort of all at the same time.
Yeah.
And then from the Human Reform League, we have Colonel Sergei Smirnov, which may be the most Russian name that you could come up with.
It's half racist in a way that, like, I don't know, like a Gundam series with, like, the Mexican Empire in, the year 10,000.
Right.
It's like General Tequila.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if I a pasty white Irish kid wrote a story about Mexican heroes and I called one of them, like, Mr. Sombrero, like, I would get skewered.
That sounds like a fun cartoon character, though. Like Mr. Potato Head. Oh, we might be sitting on $1 million idea there, Brian. Mr. Sombrero. The hat you can decorate.
Yeah, you can put little plastic pieces on it, little cacti and...
From Mattel.
Little zigzags. It would be fantastic.
Little plastic tequila bottle.
Coming to stores everywhere. Holidays 2024.
Anyways, what are we leaving out? Oh yeah, what's her name?
Soma,
the super soldier.
Yeah, super soldier Soma Perez. I don't know, who's later called Marie. And then from I'll call it the bad guy faction, the Corner family. You have Alejandro Corner,
which we don't learn our villains until the last minute.
His pal in crime, who turns out to be your season 2 antagonist, Ribbons Almark.
Turns out not really to be his pal.
Yeah, not at all, actually. Laguna Harvey, and maybe the big, most aggressive antagonist of the show, Ali Al-Sachez.
Yeah, who's definitely the main threat as a pilot, but, like, this guy he's not exactly in control of a whole military.
No, But he's definitely the most well-paid and most well-employed mercenary in the world.
And the smartest. I like that he made sure his unit wasn't wiped out when he knew everybody was going to get wiped out.
He's like, nah, I'm done. You guys can handle that.
Yeah, he said, we will safely defend this empty canyon.
Yeah.
Are we missing anybody else? Middle Eastern princess and her handmaid.
You know what? I actually purposely left her out because I feel like she didn't even really have that big of an impact in season 1. Like, they built her up and then they wasted her.
But because of, like, the Gundam tropes, they had to put in their princess, Brian. Oh, there's always the political princess. And you know what, Brian? All she wants is peace.
Gotta have that peace.
She's just like a celestial being.
Oh. Get out.
Man. Going back to the Gundam pilots, Brian, they're almost each 2 characters because they each have 2 names.
That's a good point. So I gave the code names that we know them by in the show, but they're fake names.
Yeah.
I read in the lore that they were decided upon by Sumeragi, but they all have real names from their old lives before they joined Celestial Being. You slowly get unraveled to their real backstories. I guess it's not true. Tierra, they kind of just don't even really tell you what Tierra is. He's just something. He's just, maybe he's not human, maybe he is, maybe he's something in between. They don't really, at least in season 1, they're not super explicit.
He starts talking weird once he's on the ship in the later half of the season, and I was like, holy God, what is this guy? Is he a cyborg? Is he a clone? Is he a coordinator? Is he a filthy coordinator?
Is he a coordinator? Is he an innovator? So many questions.
He's a cyborg.
That one guy did turn out to be a cyborg, remember? All of a sudden he was just a cyborg, and I was like, that seems like a really big lore point that we could have explored further in the show. But
not just that, but like, maybe we should have put him in a cockpit, because I'm pretty sure he'd be able to like take tolerances. Right. You know, in the system better than other people.
He can withstand the G-force. So anyway, so back to the story here. So the first intervention, Setsuna flies down into the AEU testing their new mobile suit, the Enact, which is piloted by the AEU's ace, Patrick Colasar. You know how Chibbity Crockett was a parody of, like, Americanness?
Yeah.
Patrick Colasar is, like, the Chibbity Crockett for, I don't know, Britain, I guess. Feels like a very unflattering portrayal.
Yeah, I don't know what they're trying to do, but, like, he's very brash. He's just so arrogant and vain. Kind of felt out of character, really. And by that, I don't mean, like, out of character for him, but really, this is their ace pilot. He's kind of a bratty, loudmouth guy that can't take, like, a hint of criticism.
He also didn't seem very good, either.
Yeah, or old enough to actually be an ace, which makes you wonder, like, if this is a time of peace, how is he an ace? Oh.
Yeah, I mean, really up until sort of the very end, I kind of felt like the blocks didn't really have any competent pilots outside of Graham, Aker, Soma, and I guess the people on Graham's team, really.
I'd argue Soma might not even be that good of a pilot, because remember, she's not just a human like Graham Aker or Colasauer. She's supposed to be a super soldier. Yeah. She's openly called a super soldier. And what happens when she goes into combat? She kind of goes nuts and fails. Which defeats the whole purpose of sending out a super soldier anyway.
She does have some question marks next to her, for sure.
It was kind of a Troll Barton situation where, like, oh, this guy, he's like a stone cold killer. And then he gets in a situation and he just, like, freezes. It's like, he has a flashback and, you know, it's like, oh, where's his little circus girlfriend?
Okay, after Setsuna wipes out the Enact, he flies away, Isaac, and I want to make a point about this because this story uses GN particles in place of Minovsky particles or whatever magical thing you want to make your story work from a science perspective. And the way that GN particles work in this show is often described as, oh, they work just like Minovsky particles. And I'm not sure I like that description because they seem a lot more powerful than Minovsky particles in this show. Like, they allow the Gundams to kind of just fly away. Like, every Gundam, essentially, if you're familiar with, like, the deeper UC lore, they all have Minovsky craft systems, basically, which is what the battleships have. They're really big, and they let them fly, like the Pegasus class ships can fly on Earth. Mobile suits don't get Minovsky flight systems until when Hathaway's Flash takes place. But here, the first time they see a Gundam, it does their mobile suit in and then just flies away. And I don't feel like anyone reacted appropriately. Like, if this was real life, it would be like seeing a UFO fly in and fly out effortlessly with no, like, real propulsion.
Yeah, and kind of more to your point about how they're sort of like Minovsky particles, but not. They were trying to have it both ways, and by that I mean they showed us the GN particles were all powerful early on the season, and then come the last episode, the Gundams are kind of falling apart because, I ran out of GN particles.
Right, yeah.
I'm low on GN particles. It's like, well, I thought you could generate GN particles.
Right, yeah.
Isn't that what that's on your back? The generator?
Needs to generate a little faster, I guess.
Yeah. It was very much the plot was dictating exactly how GN particles worked, which did not work as well as I think it could have if they planned it out a little bit better.
Yeah. So the second intervention is there's this battle at Heaven's Pillar, which I believe is the Human Reform League or the HRL, their orbital elevator. All the Meisters get in the mix. They end up revealing the HRL has been storing too many mobile suits in their orbital elevator versus what they're allowed to in the treaty.
Was it the AEU?
Oh, maybe. I thought it was HRL for some reason, but maybe it was AEU. Okay. That's how confusing it was, Isaac, because I don't know. And you know why? Because Hulu didn't translate the goddamn subs telling me whose elevator I was on.
HRL. Yeah, no, HRL, the League. Theirs was the one that had like the terrorist attack attempt.
Okay, a little later on, yep.
Yeah, but I don't really fault the AEU for putting like defenses around the orbital elevator, because this isn't exactly something you want to be attacked or collapse.
No, not at all.
So, and God, celestial being. If they have troops in the orbital elevator, that's defensive, and they're not exactly, going to their borders with the other superstates to attack them or anything. So, who's really being hurt here? This is a victimless, a victimless crime.
Yeah, it's like, the kid in the class that digs up something on, you didn't do something right in your homework, and then the teacher didn't notice it, but then they, go and tell the teacher on you or something. I don't know.
Yeah, God. Shame on you.
During that battle, though, we see Lock-On fire from the Dynamis, his Gundam. The different Gundams in the show have sort of different shticks, kind of just like Gundam Wing.
Oh, God. And
Setsuna's, he uses swords, and Lock-On uses guns, like sniping. Tiaria he's like a big thick boy, and which is very in contrast with his actual appearance. And then Alleluia has basically like a Zeta Gundam transformable suit. But in this one, we see Lock-On for the first time fire. And was the gun cockpit aiming thing cool to you, or was that too on the nose? And what I mean, listeners, is he pulls this big thing to his eye to aim in his cockpit instead of just aiming on the screen. It's kind of like he has a mini gun attachment in his suit.
I thought it was ridiculous because it's like he pulls down an interactive bazooka simulator. This thing is massive. It's like the fuel rod cannon from Halo. It sits on his shoulder, and what is the point of this system if there's already a crosshair and target information on the main cockpit screen? I thought it was stupid beyond compare.
I understand why people would like it, but I feel it's not very practical.
Oh, God, fans like some of the worst things.
Direct all your hate mail to the King Space Pig. Yeah. Attention, Isaac. Colony drop.
The people that like Lock-On, they like Dierka from Gundam.
Oh, well, I don't know. I think Lock-On's...
it is the same weapon.
Oh, man. Well, yeah, that's... Out of all the Meisters, I think Lock-On's the one I like the most.
I'll definitely say it looks pretty interesting. God, part of me just wonders, why did they just send out a bunch of, what's the chunky Gundam?
Virtues.
Virtues. Why didn't they send out the big boy, who's clearly has the most powerful weapon?
He does, yeah.
He's kind of good in every situation.
And then it's kind of towards the end of the first episode. Aeolus Shinberg addresses the world via worldwide broadcast, because I guess he can do that. And he says, he introduces who Celestial Being is, says we are a private army in possession of Gundams, and we're going to eliminate war. And reporters quickly figure out that this dude has been dead for over 200 years. And that he was the one who proposed the solar power generation system. So I just imagine, Isaac, everyone in the future, Googling, who is Aeolus Shenberg, and then they figure out, oh, this guy's dead, 200 years. I think he's been dead so long, no one knew his name right away. They all had to, Google him and figure it out.
Yeah, I guess. Think of a scientist that died 200 years ago that was responsible for, I don't know, what do we use to generate power nowadays? I don't know, a coal-powered electric power plant. Probably not going to find it, but God. Is your headcanon, Brian, that Delaz, his cousin, gave him advice on how to hack the feed? Here's how you hack a broadcast so everybody has to watch it.
Delaz was good at it too, and yeah, he looks exactly like Admiral Delaz.
Pretty close.
They're cousins for sure. And all that kind of what we just talked about kind of all happens pretty much in episode 1, a little bit in episode 2. And if you can imagine, if that sounds like a lot, you're right. It does sound like a lot. And as a result, you get an effect of that in this show, which happens sometimes when shows, they bite off a little bit more than they can chew, which is you get some dialogue that's very expository and not very natural. And you get a lot of jump cuts. Like scenes take about like 7 seconds where they just like show random people. They say 2 things and they move on. And you're like, what was that? And the reason is they're trying to fit in all this stuff. They're trying to sprinkle in all these nuggets to be like, well, I showed you that in episode 1. You just didn't watch close enough. And I feel like you get a lot of that in the first season here.
Right. Yeah. God, the dialogues to come.
Oh.
I don't know where to go from here. So the story continues.
The story continues.
And we learn that Celestial Being is merciless in their operations because they kill like troops that they absolutely outclass. They don't care at all.
Yeah, that is one thing. We're going to see that here in a minute, because the next intervention is in Sri Lanka for some ethnic conflict, and the Meisters just kind of roll in and kind of just beat everyone up. And it really took me right back to Gundam Wing, Isaac, where the enemy has no chance at all at this point in the story. None.
No.
It's boring. There's nothing to watch. You're not watching anything. It's cool to watch the animation happen, but it's not engaging.
Yeah, and to continue on your theme of boring, oh boy, some of these mobile suit designs that we see, like these little, lackey little mooks use, these are just some of the ugliest mobile suit designs I've seen. They don't really look like they fit in any Gundam universe. They look like they're from, I don't know, Battletech maybe. They're just so blocky and not Gundam-y. It was very jarring to see them.
Yeah, so let's talk about those mooks. So there's 3 real mooks, I guess, before everyone starts getting upgraded. The AEU uses the enact, which is kind of what Graham said in the beginning. He calls it like a ripoff of their flag. I think the flag looked a lot better than the enact, and it does kind of look like a bootleg flag. It's kind of like a lanky Zone of the Enders crossed with a Macross fighter.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, flag looks a little better.
Yeah, I think towards the end, especially, the flag starts to look, okay. Like I would build Graham's flag at the end of the show.
I see what you mean. Yeah, these are absolutely underneath it all the same chassis. But yeah, the country that kind of got the short end of the stick in mobile suit design is the League.
Yeah, they have what's it called, the Tieran, right? And it is just this blocky. I see what they tried to do. They tried to make like a blocky Zaku.
Yeah,
and they succeeded in making a Mook looking blocky Zaku. Does it mesh well with the Gundams? And maybe the point is it shouldn't mesh with the Gundams. I don't know. It is a sight to behold.
Yeah, say what you will about the flag and the enact. I think they're, like you said, very Zone of the Enders, not too Gundam-y. But they look like they could at least, keep up with the Gundams, do circles around them, maneuvers and all that. The Tieran, my God, this thing looks like it's only useful for defending like a building.
Terrestrial warfare is its specialty.
Yeah.
There is a space type, though. It has those little like things on the legs, little boosters. But yeah, the Tieran is a much bigger target than the flag or the enact.
Yeah, and then there's that ugly khaki Middle Eastern one that's like, it's got like a stuck out neck. It's similar to the Tieran somewhat, but like, I forgot what that's called. But oh, that was hideous. That didn't even seem like a Gundam. Or mobile suit, I mean. It doesn't even seem like a mobile suit.
Yeah, the Tieran's could be an acquired taste, but I get it. It looks like a Mook suit, so I'm okay with it. But it is strikingly different than the Gundams. You can tell that a lot of design went into the Gundams and by that I don't mean just mecha design. I mean we need to hit on different points of the fandom. So we need this type of suit here. We need this type of suit here. The Gundams are very manufactured. I think that's my opinion of this show in general. But so after Sri Lanka, they solve stuff in Sri Lanka. Graham Aker of the Union, he is assigned to the Anti-Gundam Task Force, which is later gets renamed to the Overflag Squad. There's also, we mentioned Katagiri, aka Billy, and the Professor Ralph Eichmann. They start to theorize about the particles. Graham actually fights Setsuna and does pretty okay, given the difference in power between the two. They then have an intervention in South Africa where Gundam Curios, which is the Gundam piloted by Alleluia, he burns the narcotics fields, Isaac, which was a pretty effective way to end the conflict.
Yeah. What's unique about the Gundams kind of is no matter what the conflict's going on, they kind of show up and blow away both sides of the conflict.
Oh, yes, that is hilarious.
So, like, there was some South American country or something that's like, oh, the Gundams are here. This is great. Now's our chance to get independence. And, like, they make a big announcement and all that. And then the Gundams show up and are like, well, clearly you're causing conflict.
Yeah.
and they blew up their military.
That's actually the next intervention. So it's a country in, I assume this is a fictional country in South America called Taribi, and they withdraw from the Union, who I guess they would normally be associated with. And because, exactly what you said, they're banking on the fact that, well, if we withdraw, Celestial Being will just come and save us from the Union. So Celestial Being does come down, but to your point, they'd attack both sides, and then they regret it immediately. And they're like, all right, well, it's fine. We'll just go back to the Union. And then everyone starts to think that the Union/America, basically, because I believe the president of America is still in charge in this instance of the Union.
Yeah, it's pretty clear who's in charge of at least the League and the Union, because the headquarters for the Union, it's like a huge building they built behind the White House.
Yeah, I believe the president still lives in the White House. So
yeah, and then for the League, like, it's clearly their headquarters is in the Forbidden City in China. So China's really calling the shots.
So yeah, America takes Taribi back. So we did see a lot of Curios now, Isaac. And so for Curios, I don't really understand. Maybe I just don't see it. But given the power of the GN particles, all the Gundams fly, and they all fly pretty fast. Does it really need a jet form?
I don't think so.
Does it make that much of a difference?
No. It's they just needed something cool and transformable,
right? Because
they're checking off the checklist for selling plastic. So that's, even if something was keeping up with you, you have shields and you have weapons.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry too much if they get close.
Around this time, Colonel Sergei Smirnov, the fearless Russian.
Yeah.
He fights Setsuna in the Tierra, and he actually does pretty okay. His goal is he wants to capture Gundam Isaac.
As kind of weak as the characters are because of how little time we spend with them, Smirnov always came off as pretty well done. He was very much a soldier. He's got his mission. He cleverly realized that, look, these things are very powerful, so what do we do to catch up? We have to capture one. That's really all we really need to be focusing on. So good for Smirnov. I generally liked his scenes a lot.
Yeah, I think he was actually one of the best characters in the show. I agree. Yeah. I liked him probably the most out of the characters in the faction, with the exception of Graham. I like Graham. And he puts his money where his mouth is. Like, he's on the battlefield, exercising his decisions rather than just a guy in the back.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting, though, because it's so trickled down. Like, he's on the field, but we never really get too much communication from guys above him. He's certainly not getting, like, direct orders from the president or chairman of the League. He's just, an officer on the front lines doing what he's being told. Which is kind of interesting because in almost every other Gundam series, we absolutely see, like, the main villain by now. And in this series, we really haven't seen the head big bad. We've seen the heads of the super states, but yeah, Smirnov is just kind of doing his job.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we've probably glimpsed Alejandro at this point, but you don't really know. I mean, he kind of looks evil, so you could kind of infer he's maybe a bad guy.
Yeah.
But he is with Ribbons, and Ribbons doesn't look evil. By the way, the voice that they chose for Ribbons is like this very deep voice, and I did not expect that at all. I was like taken aback.
Yeah, it's so vague though. It's done very subtly. Like Alejandro might be up to something, but kind of around every turn he seems to be doing nothing too overtly evil. So it was very very hidden.
We then meet Soma Perez. I don't know. She, like you said, is a super soldier with nanomachines in her. I feel like we don't really get a whole lot of clarity on what that means. There is a line later in the show that says nanomachines helps with space exposure. But like they kind of just say, well, she has nanomachines in her, she's a super soldier. But at least to this point, they haven't really told us much more than that.
No, as far as I'm concerned, if she's a super soldier, it's probably all propaganda. Because she didn't really perform better, to my knowledge. They gave her certainly a different mobile suit, but I don't feel like she did anything super soldiery.
I mean, I wouldn't say she performed better than Graham.
No, and I mean, other pilots in her squadron in space lived, so she wasn't exactly the lone survivor because of nanomachines.
Right.
Yeah.
This is when we hop aboard the HRL elevator, like you're talking about, the League's elevator. So Alleluia happens to be a super soldier too, from the same program that Soma's from. and for whatever reason, their brainwaves don't get along, and Alleluia's brainwaves cause Soma to go nuts when she's out on a training exercise, and she shoots the elevator, which is a terrible, terrible move. It immediately shows why space elevators are very fragile and perhaps a bad idea.
Oh, God. The top ace goes insane in space temporarily, or has like an episode of some type of reaction, and it just starts blasting away. Blasting away at the civilians in the fragile, massive, economically vital orbital elevator.
So she shoots at the elevator just indiscriminately, and it causes like a piece of the elevator with like the people in it to kind of disconnect, and it's floating through space. This actually was probably ended up being the most compelling episode of the show so far, in my opinion. And they probably should have started with this one, because in this case it was the only one with real drama, because again, the other episodes, the Gundams were just destroying these mooks that really had no chance. And so it's fine to do that once, but when you do it 4 episodes in a row, it was kind of like, all right, I get it. Like, I understand. Like, the Gundams are good, you know? It was very much like Wing, where they would just mow down the Leos episode after episode.
Yeah, it was very dry, but here we kind of see the Gundams, they become saviors, don't they, Brian?
Yeah.
Oh.
It seems like Alleluia was adrift in space when he was younger, and so that pulls at his heartstrings, and he goes off script, off the plan from the AI computer known as Veda, which is kind of giving them orders. And he pushes the elevator block back, and Lock-On shoots the others free from Earth. He's on Earth, he's laying down, and he shoots up, which is actually pretty cool. I thought it was a great moment in the show, definitely one of the highlights. Best use of the set piece of the orbital elevator, right? If you put an orbital elevator in your show, Isaac, you better use it. This was a good use of the orbital elevator because it involved a piece coming off, and they had to shoot at it from the ground. I thought that was a good episode.
Yeah, it was actually pretty cool seeing the sniper rifle used in a non-kill situation. Yeah, everybody got saved. I was really surprised at that. Doesn't seem like something that would happen in UC.
Next, we meet Alial Sanchez, a mercenary who we find out later brainwashed, trained, and used Setsuna as a child soldier when he was younger. And when I say brainwashed and trained, Isaac, I mean that he brainwashed Setsuna and other child soldiers so much so that they killed their families, I guess is probably like some sort of initiation into this group that they were in.
Yeah, it was...
It was extreme.
It was heavy territory for Gundam to stray in. And again, this was 2007, so gee, what was going on in the world at that time?
War on Terror in full swing.
So clearly, Azadistan in no way refers to Afghanistan. Clearly.
How dare you make that connection, sir?
Yeah. The Middle Eastern location is absolutely coincidental.
Yeah.
And Ali, being a force of evil, invoking the name of God, is clearly a character not meant to relate to anything in the real world.
Yeah, it was very heavy. I mean, at least in the rest of season 1, we don't get too much more about it, but it does seem like Setsuna killed his family in order to join this group.
I had to say, though, like, Ali, at least at this moment, they haven't really revealed yet whether he was genuinely religious at the time or it was just a tool for him to use. But you can kind of make your own inference as you see Ali later on.
Yeah, I'm going to say it was a tool. I don't think he really gives two craps about it. So he self-describes himself later as a warmonger. So
he's really good at it.
He's extremely good. He's the Liam Neeson of mercenaries if Liam Neeson was a bad guy in Taken.
Sometimes, Brian, you find your calling in life, and Ali found his. He just fits him like a glove.
He did.
He gets a gold star. He's employee of the month every month at Trust PMC.
For all of his employers.
Which is another intervention, by the way.
That's true. That one's coming up, yeah. The next one is the AEU, the European... Are they also the Union?
No, okay. So, yes, the Union is in their name, which, oh, God, this was such a terrible setup, right? Because they have, like... What's the Union's full name? It's like the Union of Energy...
Yeah, Union of, like, Free States or something like that, yeah.
Okay. That is... Even though it has the name Union in it, it is like North and South America, Japan, and Australia. Okay, so that's one group. Right. Essentially Oceania from 1984.
Yeah, plus Japan, right?
Yeah, Japan's in there too. Okay, Human Reform League is kind of like pretty much everybody next to China.
All the communists are in the Human Reform League.
that big panda just gave them all a hug, and now they're all stuck together. And then the advanced European Union is, just like it says, essentially all of Europe. And it's only called the AEU because if we said Advanced European Union, people get confused. If it's called the Union, which is the name of the North America-led group.
Yeah, they shouldn't have put Union in both names. That's real bad.
No, I don't know why they didn't use Commonwealth or Conglomerate. There's so many options. Anyways, yeah, the AEU. They're not just the European Union, Brian. They're the Advanced European Union.
They're the leftovers. I feel like they got the least left. What do you think about each of their flags?
Oh, wow. Well, a Human Reform League probably is the most interesting because, like, they're clearly kind of like this future kind of socialism going on, right? Like, their uniforms are the same kind of depressing communist uniforms that you see if you look at, like, communist military stuff. But I really think their flag is interesting. It's got an anvil because, of course, what are they doing there? They're just hammering humans until we can forge them into something new, something better. You know, even the colors on the flag are interesting choices. The AEU, it's a little boring. It's like it's essentially NATO's flag. If you look at NATO's flag, it's the same kind of four-pointed nautical star, except this time it's kind of like red, blue, and their background's teal. It's okay. The Union kind of has the worst flag because they put their name on the flag, which is a bad idea. There's only a few countries where you put wording on the flag, it works. Like Brazil, that's on one of the short lists of where people look at your flag and like, okay, that's kind of cool. That's kind of a cool design.
Yeah, it feels like you ran out of ideas if you just put your name.
Yeah, it's like this weird kind of, what is that, a vase?
It's a vase.
I don't even know what that is. Yeah, excuse me. It's a North American vase. Yeah, the Union's flag, not great. I'll leave it there. But there is one thing that I thought was really interesting. So we know there's a leader for the Human Reform League. We know there's a single leader for the Union. Why do you think the writers made a decision, Brian, for the Advanced European Union that they would essentially have a council seemingly of 10 people, because there's 10 chairs at that table, but only like 7 or 6 ever show up to actually discuss what's going on?
Could it be a commentary on the fact that, like, the real world has the European Union, but maybe 3 or 4 of those countries are really the ones that call the shots?
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a perfect point. Even in the distant future, the European Union will still really be just like the 4 countries that really matter deciding what's going to happen.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that the other ones don't matter, but they don't necessarily have the weight that the certain 3 to 4 do.
That is how it is, though.
It is how it
one
is.
Of them,
yeah.
Remember one guy at the table was like, he pointed out something about like how his country's poor.
Yeah.
Then like this other guy's country is like, well, you know, that's easier for you to say. My country doesn't have as much money to like just spam out mobile suits or something.
Right, exactly.
Anyways, AEU attack.
The AEU sends troops into the nation of Moralia to protect their colony development interests. Basically, it sounded like the AEU had kind of been falling behind in colony development, and they really needed this place because that's where the PMCs were, I think, to the private military corporations in order to complete their colony development stuff they wanted to do. So they send troops in, kind of knowing that Celestial Being is going to be there. Before they arrive, though, Katagiri and Sumeragi meet at a bar, and we find out that they used to be an item. And Isaac, her shirt in this scene is absolutely ridiculous. It is like the lowest cut thing I think I've ever seen in any Gundam anime. And apparently, according to the wiki, this was a joke back in the day that fans used to write Gundam 00 is Gundam with 2 zeros. But apparently fans used to write it as Gundam 00 with capital O's to emphasize the fact that this show has the largest endowed women of any Gundam series by far. And we're just going to get that through this whole season 1 with Sumeragi and with the other bridge girls. And what amazes me, Isaac, is this came after Seed. Seed and Seed Destiny were famous for the boob physics, right? Or at least the maybe lack of realistic boob physics with all the bouncing. But here, they went way bigger in the chest area, but there's no physics. The Seed bouncing didn't make it into this show. It's like they can't pick a path. I'm surprised.
You can't have your cake and eat it too, Brian. Last one, they were covered, but they move.
Right.
This one, they're uncovered, but they don't move.
The physics went away. I don't understand.
They're locked in by GN particles.
They don't know how to go for it. They don't know how to stick the landing.
Stick the moving.
But that's gonna be a theme throughout this show. She's gonna wear the most ridiculous outfits as pure fan service. So but at the AEU here, Isaac, they end up hiring Ali Al-Sachiz to fight in Moralia. And he ends up fighting Setsuna. Setsuna recognizes him based on his movements, thinks he's doing. He gets out of the cockpit to kind of feel it out with Ali here. But Lock-On breaks it up. And Tierra is very upset that he got out of the cockpit.
Yeah, he exposed himself. Oh, we're never supposed to leave the cockpit. You know, what could happen? We're entrusted with these Gundams.
Yeah, exactly. Tierra actually says he will shoot Setsuna for getting out. Tierra is like all about sticking to the plan. Like, if you go off the plan, like, he's gonna kill you.
Who would sign up but these broken men to be Gundam Meisters? Because one man has a split personality. The other man is like traumatized from his family being killed in a bombing. The other one shot his parents. And then the other one, we don't even know if he's a human.
Right, yeah, he doesn't. The one who's mad doesn't have the bad past because he's not even really human, so.
Yeah, there was a very short list of who could be a Gundam Meister. And even if you are a Gundam Meister, other Gundam Meisters can be a threat to you. So there's just no safe harbor in this life.
Yeah, so AEU and Moralia are losing badly after the intervention. They end up accepting Moralia into protection just as they had planned. They figured Celestial Being would interfere, Moralia and AEU would take heavy losses, and Moralia would need protection. And they can be like, oh, Moralia, you know what? If you want, we'll let you back in as long as you help us with our colony development. And they did. So it all worked out for the AEU. But again, Isaac, we're still in the intervention phase. We're still doing these interventions. When is the plot going to move forward? And finally, it sort of starts to happen. Terrorists start bombing things because the world, or at least as it's pitched, the world is sick of this. And so a terrorist group starts to bomb things and says, you know, we're not going to stop bombing things until Celestial Being stops attacking people.
Yeah.
The first attack is in Japan, I believe, near Saji and Luis, and starts to hit home for them that this thing is real, terrorists are real. They don't really like Celestial Being because they're like, in their mind, like Celestial Being is causing these attacks indirectly. Quickly thereafter, there's another terrorist attack in Shanghai. At the same time, like Setsuna is traveling to Azaddistan, his home. He reveals himself to the princess, Marina Ismail. The conversation between him and Marina didn't really do it for me, Isaac, about God and this, that, and the other, and why are you fighting, and I'm a Gundam, and I don't know. What did you think about all of Setsuna's waxing poetic with his I am a Gundam shtick?
It was very Gundam-y, and by that I mean it evoked Hiro Yui, and, you know, his bizarre talking, and some of the philosophical nonsense the Gundam sometimes gets involved in. Although I have to say, Unicorn maybe did it best with, like, Benager. That was much more well-written than a lot of the Gundam kind of speeches and monologues that we get. But yeah, this is very true to form for Gundam about, you know, peace and war and, you know, oh, I'm a broken man. I'm just a tool for Celestial Being.
I am a Gundam. Yeah, Setsuna loves to think himself as a Gundam, I guess. And later a Gundam is defined, I believe, as the embodiment of the eradication of war. So I guess that kind of makes sense, but I wish they would have given that definition in episode 1, not like in episode 20 or whenever they give that definition, because it just kind of sounds a little wacky, and it took me out of a lot of those exchanges. Like, I couldn't take it seriously.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, like, because she's the princess character, there's not a lot of times where we can have her in a combat situation. You know, right. That has to really be rare. So what are we going to have her do? She's going to talk in a garden to a Gundam pilot, essentially the main character. I think she picked up pretty quickly, right? That, like, well, you might be telling me your name's Japanese, but you do not look like a Japanese person. Yeah. You clearly are from a Middle Eastern country.
That's a great point, because the reason he even, like, got to see her was because he was looking for a terrorist, right? And he saw someone who he thought was a terrorist and shoots at him right away without even really checking if the person was a terrorist. Did you notice that? And then he gets pulled over by the cops, obviously because he's shooting at people. And then the princess is driving by at, like, high speed. She glances out the window at this boy, and she immediately pulls around, and she's like, oh, well, he must be from Azaddistan. There's no way that she got enough view of him to know where he was from.
She must know the look of her own people, you know?
I guess, but
I can tell that you are an Azaddistani.
There's suspension of disbelief, and then there's just outright, this makes no sense. If you need her to see him, she needs to drive by slowly.
Not only that, but she has, like, her bodyguard get out and talk to the cops, right? Like,
yeah, she's like, do you know who this is? This is Marina Ismail, blah, 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 yeah.
The bodyguard should have put more of a fight and said, look, we have no idea who this man is. He should not be in the car with you, Your Highness.
parts of this show like this where I feel like this show has such an intricate plot sometimes, and then they execute things like this where I'm just like, this makes no sense. All you had to do was make her drive by faster. He didn't need to shoot at the random car. There could have been a simpler way to get those two together that made more sense.
No, she had to help him because she's got a big heart. She's a princess, Brian. Yeah. She's a Gundam princess, and a Gundam princess just wants peace and to help everybody, including men with guns on the side of the freeway.
We find out that Laka-un, a.k.a. Neil Delandi, is his real name.
A.k.a. Paddy O'Malley.
He's definitely from Ireland. I gotta like him if he's Irish, Isaac. He has a twin brother. We find that out very abruptly. I think it was like really quick scene, right? When they're just like bringing flowers to your grave, and then boom, there's like another one, and you're like, okay, and then we just move on. So you're just supposed to store that in your mind for another like 15 episodes. So just hold on to that. Hopefully you didn't look away from the TV.
Good thing another Gundam Meister wasn't there. He would have taken out a gun and be like, it's too much of a threat to the Gundam and celestial being if it's two of you.
Oh, Tiaria. So 4 months pass. 60 armed interventions have happened so far, which is a lot, Isaac. Like, there's got to like not be a lot of conflict left in the world.
No, and God, I don't even know what the super states are doing at this point. It was kind of implied that they were in communications for longer than we thought.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
they're going to start cooperating here, but before they get to the actual cooperation, we get to another what I would call high point in terms of at least the episode and the drama and the engagement, which is when the League hatches a plan to capture Gundam by launching thousands of probes into space to find the Ptolemy. Which actually is a fantastic idea, and their logic here is that we know that GN particles disrupt communication. So if we launch all of our probes, we'll just pay attention to the probes where communication is down, and we'll figure out where their ship is. That's a pretty good idea.
It was brilliant. I love the League doing this, and God, I wonder if they would have been more successful if they kind of got the other super states in on it.
Yeah, you could have accelerated the end of the show.
Yeah, like I said, look, whatever space forces you have, we have a plan to detect the Gundams. Have your space forces ready at the drop of a hat to rush to where we tell you to go. Yeah, and we'll be done with this Gundam problem once and for all. And it almost worked.
Yeah, and
at least partially.
To Smirnov's credit, right? He finds it and he's like, all right, all the mobile suits, go get them. He just sends them all there, and like, you know, Tsumeragi tries to do some feint stuff and it doesn't work. Dynamis is kind of messed up and it's stuck on the ramp. The League does capture Kyrios for a little bit. He eventually, because Hallelujah loses consciousness, because Soma's out there, but he does wake up, and Hallelujah takes over, and he cuts his way out. Tiaria does get overwhelmed. He has to reveal Nodle, Gundam Nodle, which is basically like, Virtue is this really big Gundam, and it breaks up and loses its armor, and there's a skinny Gundam underneath, kind of like the Gundam Odysseus underneath the Penelope, I guess. But this Gundam is called Nodle. It has this kind of flowing hair. But he's very disappointed in himself. Now he's just like Lock-On, who had to reveal something, quote, too early. Nodle being revealed and Hallelujah helping out ends up allowing the Gundams to get away. But they were almost captured. To your point, Isaac, they almost had them. And here was where you suggested that perhaps they should have used a nuke.
Yeah, considering how close quarters the fighting got, I wonder if taking a nuclear weapon into space would have, essentially one-shotted at least one or two of the Gundams.
Absolutely. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. So, or at least have it as a backup plan,
Yeah, like maybe like the captain of one of the capital ships of the League fleets, has orders directly from the top not to tell Smirnov that he does have a nuke, and he has orders to use it if it looks like they're not going to capture those Gundams.
Right, we didn't really hear about nukes at all in this first season.
No, I don't know why. I guess that just puts so much more support towards how peaceful these times are. We don't hear any talk of either the super states wanting to rule the world or invade the other super states for more power or more energy. Everybody's got their little tent pole gathering up energy, and that's really all they need.
There's several things here I noticed. So one, during this attempted capture, I felt like spaceships were pretty advanced, given that there were not a lot of colonies.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you? Like, UC and other Gundam stuff, there's a lot of colonies, so it kind of makes sense that you'd have to be pretty good at space travel. Here, they're pretty good at space travel, but they don't have really much up there.
No, I mean, it seemed like it was pretty sufficient for their needs, right? Just what's that carrier from the UC? What's the Federation carrier called? The one the Beehive was. Whatever that was, it was essentially that. So it's essentially just, two big containers and then like the bridge. So 2 semi-trucks carrying your mobile suits into combat. That's really all you need to get into orbit to deal with whatever's in orbit. No huge battleships or anything like that like we saw in 1 Year War. So it definitely makes the Ptolemy look like it's the way more advanced because that ship is like, you could live on that ship.
No, yeah, absolutely. And then what did we think about the pilot helmets that the League has that cover their full face with the cord? I thought that was kind of neat, and it was different than what we've seen before.
Yeah, I liked how unique it was. Exactly. You just said it. It was so different. I liked that it meant that they had their own sort of internalized display. They had they didn't trust Wi-Fi. They had like an actual cable connecting the helmet to the rest of the cockpit. I wonder if in concept art they originally meant for that to be the villain pilot uniforms, but instead, essentially everybody else just went with an open faceplate,
Yeah.
So, to Smirnov's credit, they were the first faction that actually did not decent against the Gundams, but at least was able to go toe-to-toe with them for a little bit.
And to your point about peace, there is a brief mention in one of these episodes around here that there is a treaty preventing combat inside of a colony. And the first thing I thought of in my head, it was like, man, UC does not give a f*** about fighting in a colony.
I mean, from what we've seen so far, though, in 00, colonies are almost non-existent. There's no population issue on Earth, so there's no need to go to a colony, really.
There's not, but they've thought ahead enough to be like, you know what, we shouldn't fight in a colony.
Yeah.
Let's do a treaty about it.
The one colony each of us have, we're not going to fight them.
So that goes back to your point about it being relatively peaceful.
Yeah, is this Aeolia's like a plan within a plan? Essentially, he's like, well, they're not even going to be geared up enough to even challenge the Gundams remotely because they're going to be so at peace.
Right.
As opposed to if everybody was actually in the middle of like a world war, then yeah, conceivably they could come up with something that could fight the Gundams.
Yeah, and around this time, right after the capture attempt fails, Alleluia is sort of beside himself. He's starting to realize that the Super Soldier program is still out there, through his repeated contact with Soma. So there is a League scientist that is involved with this Super Soldier program that's tending to Soma. And he figures out who Alleluia is by looking through the records once he realizes that Alleluia is from the program. Or he deduces that he must be from the program because that's why Soma must be freaking out. Alleluia then asks and receives permission from Veda to go destroy the Super Soldier facility, and he gets in the colony, and this is where we find out that it's been banned to fight in there, but he has this sort of internal back and forth with himself and Hallelujah about whether to liberate or destroy the facility, but he ends up blowing it up, which is pretty tragic, Isaac, because there was a lot of kids in there.
Yeah, but hey, the Gundam pilots can do no wrong, right? Because this is all for peace. God, that Super Soldier program, so for him, are we to understand that the design of it was, well, we'll just give someone a second personality that's like the best soldier ever and super violent and aggressive. And then that didn't work, so they mothballed it, or it had obvious problems. And then they're like, well, why don't we just do like nanomachines? And then we'll tell them that they're a super soldier.
I honestly don't know, because this whole plot thread is very weird to me, because, and maybe they already had the green light for 50 episodes and they knew they were going to be able to tell the back half of this show. But out of the 25 episodes we did get, we didn't learn a whole lot about the Superhuman Soldier Project, other than it was just that it was a super soldier program. Somehow nanomachines were involved. But they literally introduced it, and he'd already destroyed the facility before we learned anything more about it. Like, it's so much of a waste. I don't think it needed to be there, really.
No, and they kind of half new typed it, right? Because when he's close to her, their brains don't like each other.
Yeah. They're essentially cyber new types. I know they're calling them super soldiers, but they're essentially cyber new types. So
a little too much was going on with. It looked like it was an idea on their writing board, and then like they were originally going to have all the Gundam pilots be super soldiers of some kind, but they decided to put too much stuff into the soup.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where they try to ham-fist the new type concept or stand in for it into every show, and I don't think this one needed one.
No.
Another thing that bothered me about this show was that the characters state the obvious a lot. I don't know if it's because they think the audience is dumb or what. Not only is it annoying from a viewer perspective, but it also makes the Meisters seem very arrogant. And here's some examples. Sierra was shocked that he was getting hit before, and he was like, I can't believe they hit me, or I can't believe I missed. And Lock-On was shocked that he missed. He said something like, oh, it won't happen twice, though, and then he missed 2 more times. And then he got kicked, and he said, how was he able to kick me? And then someone said, oh, he made me use my sword. I don't care. Just like show, don't tell. It's such a weird thing. I don't know. I don't like that when characters reiterate exactly what just happened.
We don't have that attention span anymore in our world of instant gratification on our phones. This was before that. So
that could be. That's true.
If someone misses with their sword, you don't need to say that they miss. We can see that. Just have them say, well, I'll use my gun. And then use their gun. Or that's even too much exposition still.
Right. I mean,
just use the gun.
It should be evident in how you animate it and stuff that, they were really pressed to the limit and they had to, use the gun or use the sword or whatever it is.
They didn't do this in 8th MS Team.
Exactly. And 8th MS Team was 15 years before this. So we learned a little bit more about Azatistan. They fought and absorbed Krugis 6 years ago, which is where Setsuna's from. And now we've moved in the next phase, Isaac, where there's a civil war brewing in Azatistan between the conservative and movements. The Union is providing assistance. Graham is obviously there with the Union. He duels Lock-On. He does pretty well. And then we find out that there's a third party, as Lock-On discerns, that is stoking this civil war, or the concept of a civil war. And it's no doubt led by, no surprise, Ali Al-Saches. But the coup attempt, which you mentioned earlier, Isaac, I swear that coup attempt had like 5 rinky-dink mobile suits. Did they think that was going to work?
Apparently so. The coup really kind of did everything that they were going to do, right? They did the whole bait and switch plan, and then they had the excuse to do the coup, and then they actually had the mobile suits going down the streets. Not that they had much opposition. Like, everybody was just in their homes kind of listening.
Yeah.
So you don't really need a lot of mobile suits in the coup, I guess, if there's no enemy mobile suits.
Yeah.
Not counting the Gundams.
Yeah, that's fair. This kind of just seemed like a way to get more Setsuna backstory. So Setsuna encounters Graham and Katagiri investigating. And then at this part, I didn't really understand at all, Isaac. Graham deliberately gave Setsuna information indirectly about Ali Al-Saches' location.
Yeah.
Remember, he says it out loud. Why did he do that?
I don't know. Had he met Ali?
No, but he knew where it was.
Okay.
He gave it to Setsuna as if he knew he was a Gundam Meister, but then later on when he sees Setsuna, he's like, hey, you're that kid from before, meaning he didn't know he was a Gundam Meister. Why would you give that information out? I don't understand.
Who cares if he fights mercenaries? They're just mercenaries.
Maybe that's what it was. Throw the kid to the wolves? I don't know.
Let's see what these mercenaries can do.
So Setsuna fights Ali. He uses that information from Graham, fights Ali Al-Saches. Ali retreats. Setsuna then finds the conservative leader, which I failed to mention had been kidnapped by Ali Al-Saches mercenaries to stoke the civil war. He returns him to the palace with no weapons. Very nice, peaceful delivery. Oh, this another show don't tell moment, Isaac, is the conservative leader. We're told later that the conservative leader announces he was kidnapped by mercenaries and issued a joint statement with the princess for peace, but they didn't show his statement. He should have gave a speech. That should have been the end of the episode.
That'd be very Gundam too, right? The speech,
right.
And then it's hitting all the Gundam marks where it is in human's heart to desire both war. That's how Gundam talks, right?
Right, absolutely.
Join me as we stand for peace.
Aye.
And then I just roll my eyes and eat more chocolate. I'm like, attack!
Give me the attack.
Nuclear weapons deploy. All right.
The news starts finding that scientists and engineers have been disappearing over the last 200 years. And this is tying into the Eolia Schönberg being 200 years old. Starting to get a little deeper here in the lore. Meanwhile, Sumeragi and the crew, they take a break by the pool. She wears a ridiculous swimsuit. At Lagrange Point 1, some distance from the Union colony, there's the celestial being HQ in an asteroid field. So that was interesting. They do have a headquarters in space. I wonder how long they've been out there, Isaac. 200 years? It's pretty impressive.
I wonder why no one searched space to look for their headquarters.
Yeah, they should put out more probes. Maybe they would find it.
I would obviously wonder why a space-borne military where they're based at. So start searching superstates.
Yeah, it seems obvious, right? Now remember, there was the other civilian we mentioned in the beginning, Kinue, Saji's sister. She begins to expect that a celestial being has some other goal besides eliminating war. Every time someone brings this up, Isaac, they tend to die. And there's going to be no exception for her shortly. But Katagiri, he shows Sumeragi the next phase of the show, which is the blocks, the superpowers' plan to take out the Gundams. They're a united front now. Their plan is to overwhelm the Gundams with numbers and exhaust them. And they announce a joint military exercise to demonstrate defense of the orbital elevators, but they're going to do it on a piece of land under which enriched uranium is buried from some, like, it sounded like bad event in the past. And the thought is, or the clear intent is that celestial being must intervene because of where the thing is taking place. A terrorist attack is super likely. And so, of course, Veda says, yes, celestial being, you must go because terrorist attack is likely. And the blocks clearly want this to happen. This setup did not make sense to me, Isaac. Even if a terrorist attack did happen, there's no more secure of a place than having the entire, like, basically all of their military might in one spot.
Yeah. It felt a little confusing to me, too, and a little disappointing, too, because I felt like, oh, the uranium, this is going to be like a detonation trick.
You just want that nuke to go off, and they didn't do it.
Yeah, pretty much. And I was like, no, like, it's actually like a double feint where, like, the Union wants the terrorists to attack the facility. It was... Yeah, at this point I was like, oh, celestial being, as powerful as they are, the Union politicians or leaders, they're going to run rings around them.
Yeah, I didn't really understand this setup. I felt like it was too complicated, and it was too dumb of a trap for celestial being to walk into. Like, they were already depressed. Sumeragi was depressed going because she knew they were going to lose, so why even go?
Yeah, but she's a tactical forecaster, and, she doesn't really call the shots. She just kind of plans the shots.
Yeah. I think they said there are 832 mobile suits participating in this exercise. The Gundams get overwhelmed. They take hundreds of hits. They're literally fighting for 15, 20 hours, I think the total was. This is where the 00 suits pass into, like, super robot territory. They took so many direct hits to the face, to the body, of just missile after missile, and they were still going, Isaac. I think that's when it stepped out from realistic robot show for me.
It's very fitting with this being a reborn Gundam Wing. This is exactly the numbers that the Gundam Wing can handle.
Speaking of super robots, Setsuna engages Ali Al-Sanchez, except now, Isaac, he is in the Agrissa, or the Agrissa. It's a mobile armor, and it's a spider. Is a spider mobile armor good design, Isaac? And need I remind you and the listeners that the spider is the fiercest killer in the insect kingdom?
We can all agree that the spider is the most vicious killer in the animal kingdom. However, we can also agree that there isn't a single spider mobile armor or mobile suit that does well in combat. As Ali found out when his took a beam blast and he had to essentially eject his main mobile suit from, like, the lower spider body.
Yes. He had Setsuna dead to rights, to his credit, I suppose.
Yeah.
But he was blown away by the Throne Gundams with red GN particles.
Yes, they're Dr. Pepper flavored.
Wow, it actually does look. I'm never going to not be able to think of it as the Dr. Pepper Gundams now.
It's just Dr. Throne.
So the Thrones are 3 Gundams piloted by the Trinity team, Nena, Johan, and Michael. Isaac, were they really related? They were pitched to us as, like, siblings, but they didn't look at all like one another.
No, I didn't buy that they were siblings. Maybe they meant so with their names. I don't know if... I guess there's... Can Michael be German? Can Nona be German? Because Johan is...
Maybe I took it too literally. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't... Well, now that I grouped their names together, I'm kind of thinking, like, are they supposed to... This is kind of like some kind of German kind of critique because they're so, like, ruthless and bloodthirsty and kind of genocidal. But
maybe. I mean, they were like the Ein, Zwei, and whatever the other one was.
Yeah,
Dry.
Okay, so... Yeah. Yeah, God, how did this happen? How did Aeolia put these 3 in charge of the Gundams? Or is this part of his plan to have the Thrones be kind of the nut team?
Well, I don't think he did, because remember they were taking orders from Laguna Harvey, who was clearly working for Alejandro. So
were they now?
Yeah, because they have the GN Tau drives, right? They don't have the real GN drives. So
yeah, they got the knockoffs from Temu.
Yeah, but it's from Temu. Has anyone ever listeners, have you ever bought anything from Temu? I feel like anything on there is just a piece of plastic that's junk and it's not going to work.
Let me do a PSA right now for our listeners who are trying to buy things on Temu or doing that stupid online app thing where you can get, like, free stuff from Temu. Don't do it, because I read a horror story of a little girl who bought, like, nail polish remover from Temu.
Oh, no.
And it caused, like, 3rd-degree burns or something on her hand. So whatever godforsaken chemicals they're putting in their packaging and sending it out to people, let alone who knows what they're spraying the clothes with as far as coloring and pigments and dyes. God help you if that gets into your house.
If you take nothing else away from our Gundam 00 review, make sure it's that. Don't buy things from Temu.
No, if you buy things from Temu, you deserve to be visited by the Gundam Meisters.
And not the good Gundam Meisters, the Throne Meisters.
No, the Throne. Yeah, just blown away. Just your house blown away by a beam weapon.
Right after this, Alejandro meets with other observers in a big cylindrical room with pictures of objects instead of people, and they discuss whether or not they should accept the thrones because they're confused because Alejandro tells them they're not in Veda, but really Alejandro's behind the whole thing, so he's kind of feeding them a line. And then we get like a recap episode, sort of, and then they accept the thrones because they can't unanimously reject them. Apparently that's a rule. I don't know, these people apparently have power over what Celestial Being does. That was very random, Isaac. They didn't really go back and talk a lot about that. I was a little confused.
No, and it was also very clear that whoever thought of this scene, or even this organization, clearly had seen Evangelion.
Oh, absolutely. It was 100% Evangelion, yeah.
You know what we need? We need, like, the Sinister Mystery Council. Well, we don't really see their faces, but we know they have a lot of power.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought of, too. The Throne Meisters meet the Ptolemy Meisters at the end of the episode. And then when the next episode starts, we get a very puzzling scene for me, at least, because I don't know that they ever explained it or called back to it, or maybe I'm just not understanding. But there were random astronauts all of a sudden investigating a ship near Jupiter. They find a dead body and a Haro that looks like Nena's evil Haro. Speaking
of Haros, we haven't even discussed it yet, but this series, oh boy.
Oh, Haro is a sassy bitch in this series.
They got Haro front and center.
Yeah, Lock-On's Haro is like, he's hilarious.
Lock on. Well,
that was the saddest part of the show.
Not really, not for me.
But I guess we were to assume that those astronauts were sent there on behalf of Alejandro to figure out where Aeolia made the GN drives. Because I assume that if we're treating this like UC, he must have needed people out there. Do you remember this scene? It was quick. It was like a 20-second scene that, again, if you didn't watch the TV, that was it.
Yeah, they said they found a gold mine, even though they said the ship was empty. They found the Haro,
right,
and they knew it had date on it.
Right.
But other than that, the ship looked like it had been through hell, Jupiter. Yeah, this leads to where the Gundams were actually made, which is Jupiter, right?
I would assume so, or maybe Nena's Haro wasn't always evil, and that was an original Haro, and that's how they stole all the data from Veda, maybe? Maybe that's what I'm supposed to take away from it.
Yeah, they blew up the original ship, and one little Haro got away.
Listeners, explain the Jupiter scene to me, because I think I have it pieced out, but they didn't really like explicitly explain it. So
This makes the super states look even worse, because a pirate ship, a scavenger ship, was able to get to Jupiter, but the super states can't bother covering the solar system in ships, looking for wherever the hell these Gundams are based out of.
One man is like, I think we should go to Jupiter, and he goes there.
Yeah.
Which also, by the way, is one of my biggest questions for this show. Where was Alejandro? Who was manufacturing all of his stuff? Like, who's his support team?
Yeah, not just that, but like, nobody asks questions in the defense industry as far as like, I need a gold mobile armor.
It's the gaudiest thing ever made.
To match my gold pistol.
Listeners, I don't know if you've ever watched classic James Bond movies, but have you ever seen The Man with the Golden Gun? There's a whole movie about a guy who kills people with a golden gun, and
oh god, Alejandro's so pretentious.
He's very pretentious.
I want a golden pistol for the moon. And you need to balance it so that it works in the moon. And I'm going to only talk to my evil counsel in a golden, essentially a golden theater.
Alejandro is a piece of work, man. So the Trinity team comes to the Ptolemy. Nena tries to kiss Setsuna, which was super awkward. I feel like that plot point got dropped. The Trinity team declines to answer why they aren't in Veda, and we later find out they aren't in Veda because they're sent by Alejandro. Here's another thread that I didn't really understand, Isaac. So Professor Eichmann from the Union starts theorizing. He's starting to get pretty close. He's starting to understand how these reactors must work. Then he gets a message on his laptop that says he has witnessed too much, and the base is then immediately attacked by the Thrones, and he is incinerated. How was Alejandro monitoring this guy?
He must have had something in the software that detects certain searches, or when people are getting close to some type of information, accessing certain records and data, and then he knew to designate him as a threat to get him wiped out.
That is incredibly omniscient.
Yeah, he's got deep pockets. You know, he's a wealthy guy, Alejandro. The Corner family, you know.
That golden mobile armor is, if you melt it down, it's worth more than the GDP of pretty much all the nations other than the top, 10. The Throne interventions are now much more targeted at military bases, and there's a lot more indiscriminate killing. They pitch themselves as, hey, Veda has doubts about you Ptolemy Meisters. Us Throne Meisters are going to be more direct. Then we find out, though, that their red solar reactors are not exactly the same as the original Meisters reactors. And so the Ptolemy mechanic pieces it together that they must have stolen the plans from Veda. They're not really official. And around the same time, Thierry gets rejected from level 7 of Veda, indicating even more funny things are happening. Nena then indiscriminately fires on a wedding in Spain. It just happened to be the one where Luis and her family were attending. Luis survives, but her whole family dies, and Luis loses her left hand, Isaac. Graham attacks Johan, cuts off his throne's hand with his own beam saber, which was pretty cool. I thought that was one of the better parts of the series.
Yeah.
The Thrones then attack a civilian factory and kill 800 people. And between the wedding thing and the civilian factory killings, that sets off the Meisters. They've had it with the Thrones. Setsuna goes out to confront them. Even Thierry goes too. He's like so upset that they're so off script. They're messing with his beloved Veda. He goes out. They duel the Thrones. Lock-On goes to... Hallelujah, though. He's like, nah, I'm going to stay back here and guard the base. Like, I'm just going to guard the ship. Like, he doesn't go. Nodle takes control of machines connected to Veda. That's its superpower, so Tierra tries to use it on the Thrones, but Alejandro kicks him out of Veda. So now we really know that Alejandro is the bad guy, Isaac. I think this is when we start to really realize what's going on. Lock-On joins the Thrones retreat, but they reveal his name in a very abrupt reveal. They're just like, by the way, your name is this, and we know all your stuff, bye. And it's like, that was really awkward.
Oh, God, yeah. What was kind of worse, too, is like how the Gundam Meisters were so unwilling to kind of do it. They're like, oh, my God, Gundams versus Gundams.
Yeah, they just couldn't fathom such a thing.
Yeah. Celestial being, how did we reach to this point where, Gundams are going to be fighting Gundams? I thought I'd never see it.
This is also the point, Isaac, when the superpowers should have been like, hey, the Gundams are fighting Gundams. We should nuke them while they're all in the same spot.
I knew eventually you'd see the light, no pun intended, Brian, with nuclear weapons.
This is the most obvious point in the show for that to happen.
There's no better time to nuke the Gundams when they're distracted fighting each other.
And they're all in the same spot. You can just use one nuke.
Yeah, we know they probably won't be able to survive a nuke, right?
I mean, I don't think so. Come on now.
Yeah, I think all three governments can kind of agree that, look, whoever pulls this off, like, you'll have our thanks forever, and nobody will make a fuss about the bomb actually going off.
Yeah.
We'll all get to move on.
It seems like a really simple solution to their problem, and it wasn't even brought up, which bothers me.
That's why Admiral Isaac would have stopped the Gundams in one day.
It also would have been very compelling from a story perspective, because I, as a watcher, would have not expected that if all of a sudden they got nuked.
No, you wouldn't. And ironically, it would actually kind of lend credence to the point that, we should have peace because look at the powerful weapon they used to take out the Gundams. Now we need another Gundam team to go in and be the anti-nuke Gundam team.
Yeah. They just have like bigger armor.
Yeah.
Around this time, Kinoue figures out that Laguna might be Laguna Harvey. She finds out that someone named Laguna is giving the Thrones orders. And this Laguna guy is the president of the Train Corporation, which is basically allows him to control the space elevators behind the scenes, or at least influence-wise. Lock-On and Setsuna have it out. They hash out their past. Turns out Setsuna's child soldier organization killed Lock-On's parents and sister in a suicide bomber attack, so that seems bad. They get over it, though, and they're still pals. And then we head into the final part of the show, Isaac, where all of a sudden we are told that the superpowers are given 30 GN drives, the Tau drives, by someone from Celestial Being who's a traitor/benefactor. And we find out that was Laguna, but he's obviously being led by Alejandro. And we also find out that Louise can't regenerate her hand due to abnormalities from GN particles that Nena used when she shot at the wedding.
Uh-huh.
She makes Saji leave to follow his dream. Now, Isaac, this might be a little harsh, but couldn't she just wear the ring that she gave him on her other hand?
I guess she could have, but she's a stickler, Brian. It's got to go on the right hand.
The blocks form an official alliance controlled by the UN. And not only were they given 30 GN drives, Isaac, but they were also given 30 GNXs, which I didn't know this, but in English they're pronounced jinxes. I've been reading this thing for like 15 years as GNXs.
I don't think I heard the word jinx, but I wouldn't be surprised. And I don't know. It was interesting, I think, when we first see them, all of the officers from the three different super countries, super states, seeing the GN drives as they're lowered down the elevator, and they're just waiting there. And then we see eventually the jinxes and what they look like. I was happy to see them.
Do you like them? I like their little X eyes. Those are kind of neat.
Yeah, I like even their kind of X sort of boosters, the kind of frame, how it's sort of X-shaped. I'm not too big on, I think it's a little too gray. But overall, not bad. Definitely looks like an evolution, and I was just happy story-wise that we have something that can definitely handle the Gundams in groups.
Exactly. That's a great point. And so a few things here, because this is a big turning point in the show. So one, I thought that the introduction of the Jinxes was great for exactly what you said, but it was also very convenient, and I don't like that there was like no pushback from the blocks. Like they didn't bother to investigate who was giving them to him, why they were giving them to him. They were just like, oh, 30 of them? Sure. What could possibly go wrong? what strings could possibly be attached to this wonderful gift?
Yeah, are we being played clearly to develop our own weapons, and what's going to come next? Because ever since these Gundams showed up, we're really on the back foot as far as who's actually doing what.
Right. It's like that scene in Gundam Wing where Trey's, he's like, yeah, here's Epion. I have it in my basement. Or like the scene in Sea Destiny where they give Kaguli the golden, the Akatsuki Gundam. Or they're like, yeah, I have it over here. It's in the, it's in my house. But instead of just one, there's like 30. They're like, here's 30 of them. And like no one bothers to ask any questions. They're just like, heck yes, we will use them to destroy the Gundams. That was very convenient, I thought. And then two, to your point, the show is now probably at the most interesting it's been, because now things are even. The Gundams can't just steamroll everything that comes at them. And then they're going to take that away 3 episodes later when we get to Trans Am. But for the next 3 episodes, it's very interesting because the playing field has been evened. And I liked that a lot. I thought that was a good move.
Yeah, it was pretty cool finally seeing the Gundams push it back when they try to attack like a land base and they have to retreat. Yeah, I was right there cheering with the troops that the Gundams, were finally driven off for once.
Okay, so then Kinoue stops Aliel Sacha. She finds him coming out of Laguna's office. She's trying to investigate this dude, and she can't get an interview with him. But who comes out of his office is Aliel Sacha. So she stops him, not knowing who Ali is, obviously.
Oh, boy.
She's like, hey, can I ask you some questions? He's like, you can ask me questions, but you're going to get in my car first. She's like, okay, that's kind of weird, but I'll get in your car. Women never get in the car. This is a very, very bad idea.
Yeah. Never get in a car with a strange man. Never be alone in a room with a strange man. If there's doubt, there's no doubt.
Especially one that looks like Aliel Sacha's.
Right, yeah, God. What could go wrong?
Everything goes wrong in this situation because he reveals himself as a warmonger in a very maniacal manner. He then mortally wounds her, presumably stabbing her, maybe shooting her, I don't know. And then he dumps her in an alley where she dies. So
yeah,
it was terrible, Isaac.
Curiosity killed the cat, Brian.
Oh, man. Poor Saji. Yeah. They're really setting him up for a big revenge arc in the back half.
Yeah, Ali, he's... Say what you will about him, but he's good at making sure people stay quiet.
And then we get maybe a really important piece of information, which I thought was very insufficient. And I do hold this against this series, at least so far. Alejandro tells Ribbons that him and his family, meaning the Corner family, have been planning to interfere with the Celestial Being Project, or Shenberg's project, for many generations. And he couldn't do it without Ribbons, because Ribbons enabled him to find where Shenberg is, where Celestial Being's HQ is. But that was all we got, Isaac. So the whole point of this show is Alejandro doesn't like Eolia Shenberg?
Yeah.
Like, that's the motivation? I don't like you?
Right. I was hoping for a big grander reveal that, like, Alejandro... He barely said it in, like, one sentence, but I wanted much more of a reveal that Alejandro is, he's got global plans and all that, and, he's just going to co-opt the Meisters, which he was, but it wasn't spelled out enough.
Yeah, I mean, he does say that he wants to, guide the world in his direction or something like that, or whatever. But it just seems like this dude doesn't like Eagle. He doesn't like a guy that died 200 years before he was even born.
Yeah, and what is the, what is his vision? I don't think we ever really find out.
No, not really, other than he just wants it to be his. So I found his motivation very, very lacking.
Yeah, but that's what we get for our half-villain that's revealed to not really be a good guy, who was seemingly kind of on the side of peace, at least in the beginning, with the stuff he was working on.
Yeah.
He's kind of part of negotiations, and then they do this reveal.
Then he started going to those Evangelion meetings, and it was all downhill from there.
Oh, yeah. There's never a good meeting that's where you don't see people's faces.
Yeah. Sumeragi then has Felt and Christina cut the Gundams off from Veda, since they know Veda's compromised. Good move, Sumeragi. Now the blocks are just going to use the Jinxes to go after everybody. So they send the 10 Jinxes after the Thrones at the Jinx base. The other Jinxes go after the Ptolemy. Lock-On saves Tierra with Dynamis' body, but it gets damaged, and his shooting eye gets damaged, Isaac. So the Jinxes are having their way with the Gundams. There's too many of them. They try to put him in the regeneration thing, but it's going to take 3 weeks, and he's like, nah, leave me out. We don't know what's going to happen. I remember watching it thinking oh man, I'm getting Slegger vibes. I'm getting Mulaflaga vibes. I'm like, this dude's going down, Isaac.
Yeah, except Lock-On's kind of half a murderer as far as I'm concerned. But sure, they're telegraphing he won't be around long.
Right. The blocks then move to mass produce the GN drives they were given and declare the Age of Gundams is over, which is funny because the Age of Gundams has been like, I don't know, 3 months tops here in this. So I wouldn't call it an age, but that's what they said. We do see Ribbons and Alejandro at Celestial Being HQ. They're infiltrating Veda. Ribbons is hacking it. Ribbons, we haven't mentioned this, but Tierra can interface directly with Veda, and Ribbons can do the same thing. So whatever non-human Tierra is, Ribbons clearly is as well, right?
Yeah, which is weird.
It is. The Jinxes are still going at it. Setsuna decides to go to Earth, which seems maybe not super advisable, but Sanchez shows up in front of the thrones. They don't really know who he is. He gets out, and he's like, hey guys, and he shoots Michael, dead. Michael dies.
Good.
Then he steals Michael's throne Gundam, gets in, he kills Johan, destroys Johan's throne Gundam, and now, Isaac, we went from 3 throne pilots to like 1 in a matter of 60 seconds.
Yeah, these drones were overrated. They were only good against essentially unarmed civilians or just the regular militaries of the 3 factions.
Do you think they like did them dirty by getting rid of them so quickly, or because they've been in the show for several episodes now and they were just kind of done away with?
I don't know. I feel like it would have been better if they were sort of dealt with progressively, but because of how this is structured, they need to go out with a bang in this first half of the season. So I kind of understand it.
I feel like they were just culling characters. They're like, we got too many. This is a bad idea. Let's get rid of some.
Yeah, but like because they're fighting the Jinxes, though, there's not a huge fleet battle to close out this season. So what else could close it out than mass death of enemy pilots?
Yeah. Setsuna saves Nena by hitting Sanchez. Ribbons clears level 7 of Veda, giving total control to Alejandro. He pulls up Aeolia Shinberg's body, or at least what we believe to be his body, in a stasis pod. Alejandro shoots it with his golden gun, Isaac, that he had made just for this occasion, I'm sure. But Aeolia anticipated this. He plays a new message. He says, since someone tried to do this, it means you all are still fighting. So I'm giving the Gundam Meisters my last and greatest gift, the Trans Am mode for the GN drive, which allows 3 times output for a limited time plus cooldown. It's like a video game power-up. And
yeah,
in my opinion, Isaac, this is the worst part of the show because we're heading into the climax. It was the most interesting it had been because the Gundams were on their last leg. Things were even. They were going to have to win by being better pilots and being better at what they're trying to do. And instead, they just get a random power-up given to them. They didn't even really earn it.
No, it's really only triggered because, like, someone pulled a trigger in Aeolia Shinberg's tomb.
Right, and he just, like, flips a switch. And he's like, all right, you can use the thing.
He got pissed somebody shot his casket, and now he's like, oh, well, this will really ruin your plans, whoever got this far to ruin my plans.
Yeah, I did not like that at all. And basically, the Trans Am thing, if anyone's ever watched Dragon Ball Z, it's like the Kaioken power-up. Your Gundam turns a little bit red, and they go faster.
And now we have our upgrade.
Yeah.
Another model to buy.
The red version. It's actually even easier because they don't even have to make a new mold. They just make it red.
Mm-hmm.
All the Jinxes head to space to attack Ptolemy, but the Gundams use Trans Am. But they still get overwhelmed because there's still just too many Jinxes. Lock-on duels Aliel Sanchez, but he gets kamikazed by one of Graham's men. That might have been Howard. It was either Howard or Daryl. I don't remember which one.
Okay.
But then he gets damaged by the Fangs, he gets out of Dynamis, connects into the wreckage of the GN armor, which was piloted by Lasse, who looks exactly like a young version of Guts from Berserk. Did you notice that, Isaac?
Yeah.
Kind of funny. And he shoots Aliel Sanchez with the wreckage of the GN armor, who also shoots him. The GN arms explodes, and Lock-on is basically either thrown into space, adrift, or incinerated. Take your pick. He dies. Now you can do your Haro impression, Isaac.
Lock-on.
Poor Haro is traumatized.
Yeah, I didn't like the death because conceivably he could be farther enough from the explosion, right? Because he was floating in space, but with everyone's reaction, no, he did die.
Right, yeah, I did look that up. There is a note about that on the wiki. Obviously, you know how Bandai loves to release multiple media versions of the same thing, right? So there are like different, you know, in the manga, there's a radio version or whatever. I think in other versions, they make it much clearer that he did die. In one version I read that they even show his like mangled face in space, which I was like, that seems a little much. I don't know that we need that, but...
Mangled face. That's, yeah. Well, he already had a crack on his screen, his visor, so we know it's gone.
Tierra blames Setsuna for going to Earth for Lock-on's death. Sumeragi then slaps him, so we do get the Gundam trope of the captain slapping someone to fix a problem. I'm sure you were happy to see the slap.
Yeah, emotions run high when pilots die.
Oh, I love that. We should put that somewhere. That's a good quote.
We'll put on the shirt. It just shows like all the dead pilots from Gundam.
Alejandro then attacks in the ultimate thing. It's this giant golden mobile armor called the Alvatore. The Gundams engage the remaining Jinxes. The Jinx hits the bridge of the Ptolemy, killing Christina and Lishti, and that's when we find out Lishti was like half of his body was already robotic.
Yeah, that was weird.
A lot of random robot things in this show. Like, we should have learned more about that.
Yeah, and like, God, what did he say? Oh, because it was for the terrorist attack, right? But nobody else, even in the military of the other factions, has a cyborg body to our knowledge. So
right, it was very out of left field.
Yeah, I'm like, really? This guy? I figured a Gundam pilot would like be revealed to have the cyborg body.
That would be way cooler.
Yeah, right? They'd be like, oh, no wonder he can, take so much damage and, put his machine through so much G-force and all that. But no.
So those guys died. Ptolemy crew wasn't super happy about it. Setsuna eventually does get in close to the Alvatore to get through its GN field. He uses his swords to drag open giant holes in its armor. It explodes. But Alejandro ejects, and he comes out in this golden Gundam, which it's like a golden gem with wings. What did you think about that, Isaac? That was a really unique design.
I kind of knew it would come out of the Alvatore, but I kind of preferred just it being a mobile armor, because we haven't had a mobile armor opponent the whole season. Well okay, the Algisa, but
yeah, there was that one in the water too, but yeah, it didn't last very long.
Oh God, that barely counts.
Yeah, this thing was called the Alvaron. So how do you feel about this thing?
I didn't like it. You know my opinion on gold mobile suits. I just think they look kind of. It's a little much. I never liked the Hyakushihi when I saw it. I just think it's just kind of silly and just too blingy.
That'll be a whole episode, listeners. Isaac will be forced to rank the gold mobile suits from best to worst and say nice things about them.
They keep making them. God, just stop.
This thing felt really out of place to me, but it also kind of matched Alejandro's personality and his gaudiness. So,
God, what was he going to do with the world? Just more wealth for himself? I don't know.
He said he would remake it in his image, which is like the most generic bad guy thing you can say, right? For world domination.
Are we just to take him at his word? Like, it would just be a vain world under his control.
I think so.
That's it.
I think so, yeah.
That's a little silly. That's a little boring, but sure.
Yeah. So eventually Setsuna beats him too. He lodges actually 6 swords into him, 4 beam sabers and 2 daggers. And then Ribbons appears on the screen, Isaac, and he tells Alejandro that, oh, you know what, you played the jester so well, and that it's my plan now, not Aeolia's plan. And then he calls him a small man, and then Alejandro blows up.
Yeah, he got outplayed by Ribbons Allmar, because you thought he was your assistant the whole time, and it turns out he's got his own plans.
Yeah, and then you think the show's going to be over, but no, Isaac. There's one more battle. Graham Acre appears suddenly with his flag, but this time there's a solar reactor attached to it, and he's using the throne's beam saber that he stole early. He cuts off Exia's arm and his head. Setsuna then cuts off the flag's head and its leg, and they both stab each other a bunch of times. They stab each other in the chest, and they kind of all just blow up and just kind of all together fall apart. Tierra ejects his GN drive. Hallelujah is arguing with Hallelujah because Hallelujah knew that Soma was his friend named Marie the whole time from the Super Soldier program. Hallelujah goes silent. Sounds like Hallelujah is not coming back for a while. Marina then gets a posthumous letter from Setsuna as if he died, saying he was looking for answers together with his Gundam. All of a sudden, stuff just starts happening, Isaac. We're 2 years later, 3 years later into AD 2312. Saji works in space. He's writing a letter to Luis, but he sees the trail of GN particles from a Gundam, so we know that a good Gundam is still out there. The UN is renamed the Earth Sphere Federation, and then all national armed forces are dissolved and made into one military under the UN. There's new Jinxes with lances. Ribbons has innovators with him around a couch, and he says it's about to begin, which is like the most vague villain statement that you can make. Graham is alive, Isaac, and he's wearing a mask now. What do you think of his mask? It's pretty intense.
I didn't care for it. It's a little peacocky.
It looks like one of those evil Japanese, like, demon masks.
What are those called? Like, Oni.
Oh, yeah, Oni mask, yeah.
Yeah, I think it had to have been based on the Oni mask, right?
I think it has to be, right? Which is odd because, I mean, I guess Japan is in the Union, but he's not Japanese.
He, like, openly culturally appropriated them. Right. He was like, you know what, we're allies, so I'm just going to take your mask.
But I don't think it counts as cultural appropriation because this is made by Japanese people.
Yeah, well, he's an American, though.
Right. But you get what I'm saying? Like, they don't care. They're just like, whatever, give the white guy an Oni mask. It's cool.
Comment below who's appropriating who. I also thought maybe it's kind of bird-like, like an eagle or an owl, but whatever. The only thing I don't like, the design's okay. I don't like the color.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Yeah.
I also don't like his outfit with it. It's like he decided to be, you know, that little jacket the samurai take?
Yes.
He decided just to take the jacket.
I mean, he does go like full samurai, like in the second season, if I recall, and like his suit
Oh,
even kind of
God.
looks like a samurai, which is very not where I would have gone with that character, but it is what it is.
He just becomes a Japanophile. He starts drinking matcha tea, you know.
Thierry is alive. He has Luis with him, of all people, I believe. Aliel Sanchez is alive.
Thank God.
Someone's driving this show forward.
Yes.
The Ptolemy mechanic, he's with Wong Lu Mei and Hong Long and the O Gundam, which was the original one that Setsuna saw at the beginning. The first unit to be equipped with a solar reactor. Then there's another gate that we don't see what's behind it, but it's written on there, the Double O Gundam. And they imply that they have moved the O Gundam's reactor to the Double O, and that they're going to try to sync it with the Exia's GN drive, also moving to the Double O Gundam. And also Nana's there too, for some reason. And then that's it. That's season 1. I'm exhausted. That was a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Brian. We hadn't even talked about the actual our actual thoughts of this season.
Lay it on, Isaac.
Well, mobile suit design, I'm not a fan, Brian. I feel like the factions had pretty ugly designs for their mobile suits. On top of that, I feel like the Gundams themselves were largely forgettable. I don't see myself buying any of them.
Even the thick Virtue, is it thick enough for you? Or is it
It is, but like, I just don't think that would translate well into an actual plastic model.
thick but bland?
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah. And then like the actual mechanics of its weapon, that can't translate into a plastic. You know, the actual folding and combining and opening the different mode, there's no way that's going to work.
That would be hard, yeah.
So I wouldn't really get what I wanted. But overall, yeah, these designs could have been better. Not a fan. And we go 2 Zone of the Enders and then 2 Battletech with the Super State factions.
All in one show.
Yeah, and then the Gundams themselves, to me, I just consider forgettable. You know, how about you, Brian? What are your thoughts on the designs?
Yeah, not a huge fan of the Gundam designs in this show. I think my favorite design out of all of them is probably Graham's flag. And that's a very non-Gundam design.
Yeah.
But the Thrones, they're a little too samey altogether, but they were more interesting to me than the actual Meister Gundams.
Yeah, and you usually see that with villain designs and villain in general. They're more interesting than the main characters. In this situation, though, speaking of the characters themselves, man, yes, it is interesting that essentially each Gundam character not only has like a mystery backstory, but they're essentially 2 people because almost everybody has a double name, but it just comes off as a confusing mess. Add on top of that just how many other characters we have. The whole journalist thing ended in a dead end, literally, pun intended. Yeah, oh god, yeah, I was really hoping we'd have a political character, since we kind of always do, to get like a gleam into what's really going on.
Yeah.
But no, we just have the 3 nameless, you know, or the nameless in general, heads of the super states and their meetings. That's kind of our only glimpse into what's going on, but they're not really characters. We bounce too much between the super state officers like Smirnov and Mannequin. And then we really don't have a main villain except Ali, but he's not so much a villain so much as he's a bad guy mercenary that occasionally runs into the Gundams, rather than in almost every other series where they had like a dedicated evil faction that was working against the Gundams directly.
Yeah, he's not the one with the overall big plan. He's just kind of like a hired person, to your point, that keeps running into Setsuna.
No, he wasn't even like an attack dog that Alejandro kept on a leash. You know, Alejandro, he and Alejandro probably didn't really even know each other.
Yeah, they probably didn't meet face to face, yeah.
No, too many layers of the conspiracy between them, and to really know what was going on. So it's definitely an interesting Gundam series. I had interest in it more than I did when I first saw it, but I can't say I feel like this is a good Gundam series.
Yeah, I have a lot of mixed feelings. I think the overall idea is sound. An organization that's been developing for 200 years to try to stop war comes in with this advanced technology. I have no problem with that. I think that's a good...
Mm-hmm.
The execution, I think, falls a little for me. There's a lot of odd, bad / awkward dialogue. I was not a big fan of really any of the Meisters. I guess I like Lock-On, but like Setsuna really doesn't do it for me. Maybe it works for other people. If this is I do think this is one of those shows, Isaac, where this is a generational show. There are people who were brought up by the original show, by Gundam Wing, by Gundam Seed, and then there are people that were brought up by this show. So if this is your Gundam show, then I bet you love it.
Yeah.
For me, it's just not the one. I think I've told Isaac this, but Setsuna has always felt like an inferior Sakura Sosuke to me from Full Metal Panic. So if there's any Full Metal Panic fans out there, Sakura Sosuke and the antagonist, Galron, very similar to Setsuna and Aliel Sachias. But Full Metal Panic, to me, does it all in a much better way. So it's hard for me not to compare them. On top of that, Alejandro confuses me. Again, who manufactured all his stuff? I don't think we were given much to go on for the main villain of the show. And for that reason, it's so-so for me. Especially what happens in the back half. It's been a while, but for me, it goes downhill a little bit. And then, the movie, which we'll get to later. But this is the part of Gundam 00 that I like the most. And I'm still kind of so-so on it. I think it executes better than Wing, but Wing had more flair.
Wow. I know this isn't really supposed to be a comparison episode, but I think it's better than Wing.
I think it's objectively better than Wing, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's more memorable. I bet you remember the Wing characters more and the Gundam Wing Gundams more.
That's true. And that absolutely is because of the amount of characters. Wing had fewer, so we could focus on them a lot more, despite my criticism of the rest of Wing, as opposed to this series, which is, it's a Gundam pileup. It's a mess. There's way too many characters. I feel like it was designed by committee at some point with all the stuff to try to shoehorn in. Well, what if we had a pilot who survived a terrorist attack? What if we have a pilot who used to be a child soldier? What if we have a pilot who's not even human?
Then you had the guy who wasn't really invited to the writer's room, but he was sitting in. He was like, what about if we had a robot? And then they did put the robot in there, but they only put him at the very end. And they revealed that he's a robot when he died.
God, what if we have a pilot that's like, a split personality? It's like, okay, there's just way too much going on. And the whole crew, they're just a bunch of young people. It's like, well...
Oh, by the way, the guy who voices Alleluia, he was obviously the guy who voices Kai. And so I could only picture Kai the entire time I was watching the show. Speaking
of voice actors, and this is kind of a segue, but I thought Ali was pretty good.
Yeah, Ali had a great voice actor. Yeah, I mean, he definitely brought some...
He got to have the most fun.
Yeah. Overall, the voice acting was fine. I think it was just the dialogue more than... It was like what they were given to work with rather than what they did with it. If someone tells you to reiterate what just happened on the screen, that's kind of hard, right? That's not really your fault, but if that's what you're supposed to do, you got to do it.
Right.
Was Kinoe's killing, because you said, it ended in a dead end, was that a bit of like fridging a little bit? 'Cause she was pretty interesting. I was kind of sad to see her die.
Especially since there's still so much mystery with the Gundam Meisters and Aeolia Shinberg. She could have absolutely been a great character to keep around to keep digging. But we'll see if her death causes anybody else to continue digging in the conspiracy. But yeah, it seems like a mistaken choice.
Yeah, she was a good audience touch point, and we lost that. Instead, we kept Nena, which we don't need Nena.
No, she's pretty evil.
Yeah.
She can't be redeemed.
Yeah, let's swap out her for Kinoe, but
no.
Okay. Are you ready to give your horrors, Isaac?
I'm ready, Brian. Okay. Gundam 00. It's got a lot of flaws. It's should I recommend it? Ooh. You know what? I don't recommend it, and I don't not recommend it. And for that reason, I give it 2 out of 5 horrors.
Wow, that's pretty low.
It's skippable. And oh boy, are you going to wish you skipped it once we get to the movie.
If I compare this to Seed, Wing, etc., I'd say it executes better than Wing. I don't think it's as good as Seed. Definitely not good as Iron-Blooded Orphans. It's fine. I think I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, but my score is going to go down as we go up through the rest of the show. So it's going to average out to be less than that, but to me, Season 1 is peak 00, because there was so much promise, and even at the end of the season, you're like, okay, we're going somewhere, we're going to go somewhere, and then I just don't like where we go. You know what? I almost feel like, just like we rewrote Gundam Wing, maybe we should rewrite Gundam 00 in a future episode. Page 1, cut half the characters. Yeah. Page 1, half the characters were killed in an orbital elevator accident. This whole series is now about orbital elevator safety. General Ali is in control of the... Oh, man. Oh, boy. Well, I mean... I don't know, listeners. You tell us whatever you want to tell us about this show. I'm going to make a lot of predictions about some of the comments. We're going to absolutely get Defenders, just like we got Wing Defenders. Arguably, Wing's a better or worse show. But I will say this about people that would defend Gundam 00. I can absolutely see people that grew up with it wanting to defend it. Like you said, this would be their Gundam, just like Wing was for a lot of people in our generation, Brian. Yep. But, man, you guys have to admit, there's a lot of characters here, and
kind of could have been done better. It's a bit of a black sheep in the Gundam family. It really sticks out for how different it is, and not necessarily in a good way.
I think there's a lot of people who love Gundam 00. I think this is the one we're going to get the most pushback on. Maybe even more than Wing. I think Wing people know that their show's weird, but they still like it. But I think Gundam 00 lovers, I think they are ardent in their belief that their show is good. And you know what? More power to them.
I'd almost say the opposite, where Wing fans think that's normal Gundam, because that was the only Gundam available on Toonami, so that's the base standard. Yeah. Everything else is different and exotic. Gundam 00, they know it's different, but they like it anyways.
I don't think the people that love Gundam 00, I don't think UC is their favorite. So I just think we're different people.
What do you think they love about 00, though? Is it like, do they have a real fondness for the characters and like they really identify with them? Or is it more they really like the Gundam designs? It can't be the huge battles, because there's number one, not huge battles. It can't be like the massive lore of the setting, because there's not a huge lore. There's not even a ton of character development, really.
I don't know. Maybe the listeners can tell us. Tell us why you like Gundam 00 and educate us about why we are wrong.
And hang on, let me put a caveat on that. Tell us why you like or don't like Gundam 00 Season 1. This episode is only about Season 1. So don't bring in anything from Season 2 or Season, the movie or something you read in a manga. No. Please, just these 25 episodes. Please tell us what you liked about it, what you didn't like if you saw it. I'd like to think we could at least get some listeners that are going to see like, yeah, that wasn't the best Gundam series.
Yeah, and tell us who your favorite characters are, because like, I want to know who are you... we know who you're rooting for, Isaac. Yeah. But like, who comes across as your favorite character that just sticks with you? Because none of these, they're just not doing it for me. None of them are super likable.
Is it Nameless Union President? Is he your favorite character?
Maybe.
Is it Councilman number 5 of the Advanced European Union Council?
You know who's my favorite character, Isaac? It's Saji, because his voice actor was perfect. He was just like the most mellow dude. Just went along with it, with whatever. Yeah. Made friends with the girlfriend's mom. Made her food.
Yeah, God, he took so much BS from that woman.
He did.
Jesus Christ, but he got the last laugh.
Oh.
Who's laughing now?
Poor Saji.
Yeah. All
right, listeners, tell us what you're going to tell us. If you made it to the end of this episode, congratulations to you.
Jeez, this is a long episode, yeah. God, it's like we're climbing up an orbital elevator.
Take us away, Isaac. Get me out of here.
All right, listeners, before you go to sleep tonight, stand next to your bed, put your hands together, get on your knees, look up at the ceiling, and hail celestial being.
I am a Gundam.
Brian, prepare us for the dialogues to come.
Good night, everybody.